All right, everybody, welcome back. Today I have PBA Hall of Famer Norm Duke with us with 40 PBA titles, 7 majors, 1994 Tournament of Champions winner, and 1994 PBA Bowler of the Year. Norm, thank you for being on today.
Thanks for having me, Brennan.
First off, I want to mention your PBA Hall of Fame induction one last time. Congratulations on that. First off, really impressive title. Impressive really isn't the word that I'm looking for here, but it's a title that not many people get to hold, and you're able to hold that. So congratulations on that. When you first started bowling with the PBA, did you ever think that you would end up in the Hall of Fame? Was that ever a goal of yours?
Well, yeah, I mean, I had a dream when I was, I don't know, 13 years old that I wanted to be a pro bowler, and I didn't want to just be, a regular pro. I wanted to win tournaments, but about 8 or 9 or 10 years into my career, no, I did not think so. In fact, I was looking for a way out because I just wasn't good enough, and I knew it, and I knew that it was going to take a whole lot of dedication because I needed to build something that would compete against the very best. And I didn't see, the light at the end of the tunnel at the time, honestly. But I just didn't have a choice. I didn't go to school, so I didn't have anything to fall back on, Brennan. So I just uh, reluctantly kept going, and then eventually I started becoming more sound, and it was a lot more enjoyable at the top than it was the bottom. That's for sure. So it was easy to continue once I figured out that I'd had built a game that was good enough.
And so, like you were saying, it was almost like I really don't have anything that I could, like you said, fall back on. It was like, I'm kind of in this and I don't really have a backup plan. This is kind of just what I, was thinking, and right now it's just I kind of got to make it or break it at this point.
Exactly that. Exactly that. Yeah. And had I had anything to fall back on, I would not be a pro bowler from that. Uh, I guess I was probably 27, 28 when I was at my lowest in as far as performance on tour. And you know, exactly like you said, anything available to me then, and I would have taken it.
I mean, because at that point, I mean, you were 18 when you won your first title.
Yeah, and I was 26 or 7 the next one. So there were a whole lot of years in there that were paltry. And there were a lot of years in there that I was building. And when you're building something, so often you don't have access to your greatest play because you're building, and you're sometimes second guessing those things that you're bringing into play, and then you're also second guessing those things that you want to take out of play. And there were many years in there where I was doing quite better, but I wasn't winnable. And then when I turned it around, I knew it. I knew it immediately. It was like the light switch turned on, and I went, all right, that's been a serious issue for too long. It's fixed. And now, we can go run.
And here you are, kind of at the end of the finish line. I mean, now you're in the PBA 50 and you're a commentator, if I've gotten that correct.
Well, I don't bowl anymore at all. So no, I do not bowl the senior tour. I didn't even bowl the senior tour last year. I did bowl the kids tour last year, but not the seniors.
Hmm.
So technically, I stopped that a year before the kids tour. But no, I just had enough. Really, there was nothing wrong. My last shot was for a major, so it wasn't like that I wasn't capable of winning. It was just that 40 plus years, and I was ready. I was ready for something else, whatever that may be. I was ready for it. But it might sound like I was starting to hate bowling or something. No, not so much at all. I just was tired of the grind of
Hmm.
all the hotels, all the rental cars, everything. You have to be your own travel agent, and then you have to get all of your equipment and to both tours. It was just too much.
I mean, my dad was telling me the other day because I was watching the Tournament of Champions, and he was saying you wouldn't believe, you see what they show on TV, and you see the step ladder and whatever else that they've got going on, but they have a week worth of prep at those lanes beforehand. And I mean, like you just said, all the travel, the hotels, rental cars, that's stuff that the public audience just doesn't think about.
Right.
It's
And
it's
if
almost like
you're
it's just magically taken care of, but it's not.
right, and it is if you're a golfer or a tennis pro or someone like that that has the means. Some of the players use a travel service, but most of us don't. We just get online and go. And it gets confusing when you're traveling. So let's say last year I traveled 44 weeks a year, 44
Wow.
weeks. Every single place you go, you have to have transportation and you have to get there. And then you get home and all you're doing basically is washing clothes and prepping for another trip. And it got tiring. When I say it got tiring, it was tiring the last 30 years. But yeah, I got to the point where I could set it down. And so I decided to.
Hmm. Well, let's go back in time a little bit. So back in the day, you had like the strokers and the finesse bowlers like Earl Anthony, Walter Ray Williams Jr., Tommy Hudson, and you as well as others. Then we were introduced to the crankers, Mark Roth, Steve Cook, Marshall Holman, Pete Weber. You strike for show, you spare for dough. What are your feelings as far as strikers versus crankers, and now two-handed deliveries as far as an overall accuracy is concerned?
Well, let's just get this straight. If we were still in the 80s right now, there would be no two-handed bowlers. Trust me. There's a reason that we didn't do it. Now, when I say we, all of us that started in my age group, I was 4, 5, 6, 7 years old when I first picked a ball up. So you had to have two hands. There's the only way you could carry a ball.
Mm-hmm.
We got out of that because you had to. You had to have accuracy. You had to have ball speed. We oiled lanes once a day, even on tour. Plastic balls hooked immediately. Well, those two-handers wouldn't do very well. In, let's say, the 2000s, where every lane's dressed the same by a machine, so it's completely accurate every day, the same, in the fact that they can build the mounds and have the scoring environment better. As soon as they allow for that, then what you're doing is you're transferring into a power game. And the scoring of bowling hasn't changed any, Brennan. So
Mm-hmm.
double is still worth, a strike is still worth 10 plus the next two. If you're like we did in the 80s, if you're striking 6 times a game maximum, that's a lot different than 7.2 or 3 like we are right now maximum.
Mm-hmm.
And so the power game is definitely going to it's going to be the dominant, even on the left side, both sides. It does not mean that strokers can't get there. Like I said, my last shot was for the Masters title, but it is predominantly an environment that caters to power. And the same in golf right now. They're trying to pare back the golf ball. They're trying to pare back the equipment use, just so they don't make golf courses so long that nobody can enjoy them. That's not a pro. We have the same type of environment here, but I think on steroids. Number one, and number two, there is no paring nothing back. The USBC just doesn't seem to want to govern to that degree. I wish they would. I think they should. I think they should go back 40 years in time. But that's their call. That's their decision. And all we are as players, and we play in the environment they give us.
Mm-hmm.
Power's here to stay until that changes.
And until then, too, I mean, well, actually, I won't go there. But until then, it's just the evolution of the game that you have to adapt to.
Of course. Yeah. And if it would have evolved the other way, where bowling balls would have been restricted even past plastic, let's say to rubber, well, then your accuracy, your spare game and all that would be the environment that you're going to need to play in. And look, pros are going to get there either way. They're pros for a reason. They've committed and they've dedicated themselves. Jason Belmonte would win just as many tournaments right now that he does now. He just done it with one hand. So I think it's the mind that gave those guys the ability to do what they're doing, and not the environment. But the environment definitely suggests that they will do it with the power game.
So you've said multiple times that you see Jason Belmonte as the greatest bowler of all time. When you look at the other greats, Walter Ray, Earl Anthony, Pete Weber, and the list goes on. What differentiates Jason from them?
Not a lot, not a whole lot at all. I mean, you're talking about for somebody to suggest that Walter Ray's not even the greatest of all time, well, that's kind of idiotic. One would suggest that he is just because of his record. And listen, every tournament that he won, I was in the field. He did it on my watch. I know how great that man is. And it's astounding. Earl, Pete, astounding players. And Jason as well. I think that Jason is the best right now, by far. Yes. Is he the greatest of all time? In my mind, yes. But not by, not, he's not smoking the rest of us. He's just in my mind, the current leader. And he'll get surpassed, and so will the person who surpasses him. And I mean, this is evolution of sport, just like any other sport. The greats are
Absolutely.
going to be better than the greats in their prior to them.
And that's what makes them the greats.
Isn't that what makes it? I mean, at one point we were looking at a 4-minute mile being insurmountable, and now you have to get to that to even qualify. So,
Man, I don't know how people can run a 4-minute mile.
I don't know.
I couldn't get past the 7:30, and that was when I was running every day. I don't know
I
how
can't
people
even
can
run
do
for
it.
4 minutes, much less a whole mile.
I'm feeling that. I mean, we've got our PT standards here, but it's to the point where as long as you pass the test, you're passing it. There's really that's one thing that differentiates the Air Force from other branches. Like we have the Army that's outside doing PT every day. But I'll go and run a mile and a half once every 6 months for my PT test. And it gets, it fluctuates of however I'm doing physically at that point. But I don't understand how people can run that fast. Again, unless, like you said, they dedicated themselves to it, and that's what makes them, so good or a pro, in sports. That's what makes them that good is when they dedicate themselves to it, or in
Right,
anything for that
correct.
matter.
Yeah. And if you don't love it, it's not something, I mean, we're talking any sport. If you don't love the sport you're in, it's not just something that you can say, okay, I'm going to dedicate in this, and it's going to be like my job. And this, you almost have to love it in order to even compete with the best, because they love it so much. It's easy for them to dedicate themselves because they cannot wait to do it. And if you're, getting up in the morning and dreading your day, so to speak, you're just not going to be as good as those players that love it.
Right. Versus
So
the players
I
that
look at
wake
love
up.
first.
Yeah, versus the players that wake up, get out of bed, and they're like, "Oh, I want to get to the lanes," or straight away, because I had this dream last night, and I can do this different, or I can do that different, or whatever it may be.
Right.
Trying to compete with that, that's uh, it's for someone who isn't at that level, it's unfathomable to imagine.
Exactly that. It's unfathomable to catch somebody that loves something so much that when they go to bed, they're thinking about how to be better tomorrow, and they wake up and they can't wait to go get there.
Hmm.
Those are going to be the ones that reach the top and maintain that pinnacle.
So as you've gotten older, have you significantly had to change ball weight? And if so, what types of other adjustments were needed to be made to compensate for the ball weight difference? For example, different approach, arm swing, speed adjustments, stuff like that.
Nothing. I ended with the max. I didn't ever go down in weight. So 16 pounds I threw my entire career. And no, I would not have gone down. I felt like that I would throw a Volkswagen bus down there if they'd let me. It's like going into the teacher when you're in school and the teacher's got 5 paddles laying out on the desk, and you're going to get a whipping with one of them, but you get to choose the paddle. I'm choosing the small one now. I want the smallest paddle if he's going to. So as the teacher, I want the biggest paddle if I'm going to do the pins damage. So that's what I learned a long time ago. Is yeah, you got to get the big stick after him, and then you gotta wield it right. And uh, yeah, so I didn't make any changes that way. I will say though that I was 58 when I retired, and the difference in 58 and 28 and 38 and 48 are all different. And you don't feel like you've lost anything. You just don't feel like you've lost it, but you have. And I ended up, it was hard for me to enjoy the day because I never seemed to perform at my level of expectation. And that expectation was established with a much younger me. And so, therefore, it got harder and harder. And I ended up dedicating more and more over the years to the success. The older I got, the harder I worked. And that's one of the reasons when I timed out, I said, look, the only way for me to compete the way I want to is with this commitment. And that's just not one that I even have time for. And, Father Time gets us all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine, you know, doing the same thing for 30, 40 years, whatever it may be. That does take a lot of time and dedication. People always ask me like, do you plan on making the military a career? And it's like I can't even think a year in advance, let alone, 20 years, or whatever it may be in advance. It's just, to me, I can't do that. So I give props to anybody who's able to do that and determine, hey, this is what I want to do for this longevity worth of time. And I'm going to dedicate myself to that. I give anybody that does that, including you, major, major props for that, because that's just something at this point that I can't see myself doing.
Right.
So dad decided to throw in a fun fact here. He said, I bowled in an open league at Rivera. It means I was going to be bowling against all the 200 plus average guys in the area. I had an average of 160 at the time. On the last night of league play, the lanes had been stripped of all oil because the Firestone TOC was starting the next week. I rolled a 278, which turned out to be high game for the league with my dad's old Brunswick Black Beauty.
Mhm.
And then follow up, I don't know if this is really a follow-up, but he has these two paired together. He said, at what age did you start bowling and why? Who are your influences? And did you ever try to imitate any particular bowler, or did you develop your own style?
That's great questions. Yes, yes, and yes, and yes. Uh, Anytime that you watch others do something great, then you try to adapt at least the things that you think that propels them to that level. So I had my Tom Baker release. I have my Pete Weber. I have my Dave Traber, my version of all of the guys that I watch. Now, it's not like I wake up and I go, boy, I feel like Tom Baker today. No, 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 no. What you do is you find that there is an advantage out there. And in looking for it, you've determined that it favors the Tom Baker style. And so I would try to flip it, twirl it like Tom Baker would. It's not that that morning in the shower I was like, "Oh, come on, Tom Baker, come on in here." No, no, it's what we read on the lanes. And then when you see Pete Weber up there just striking at will, and you have a pretty sound Pete Weber kind of delivery with a hook and hard hand and getting that backswing up there and all. Yes, absolutely, I'll adapt to that. But what I built was a game of versatility so that I could throw the ball more ways than any man on earth or woman. And I have the biggest range of speed to a winnable speed. My top range and my bottom range are probably about 8 or 9 mile an hour difference in winnable speed. That's phenomenal. And then you have to get the ball to turn different ways. You have to get the loft different. You have to get uh, 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 even bowling balls get to back up so that you can shoot spares better. All of those things I built, and I said, this is where I'm struggling. I dedicated all my resources to the deficiencies and said, look, you can get great at what you're already good at, and you only get a little better. Get great at what you suck at, and then you get a lot better. And so I just said every day, I said, be honest, man, where's your deficiency? And let's go get that. Let's go make that something of your own advantage.
I mean, and that's one thing that a lot of people, it's almost become like a cliche at this point, but it's so true. Go after what you are like faulting in or what you're not as good at, because if you keep focusing on what you're only good at, you're never going to proceed in it. I think that was a Dr. Seuss quote somewhere in there.
Well, then you can generalize it differently. You can say, well, bowling is what you're doing, and you're great at that. And so if you practice bowling, you're practicing something you're already great at. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But we've now gotten end of the board, so to speak, where we say, yeah, let's not talk about good or great at bowling yet. Let's talk about good or great at throwing it a different way, or having
Right.
the mental mindset to handle it when you're in pressure, to be able to play during sicknesses, and during injuries, and it all matters. I mean, anytime you're in sport, you're not just running your time card through there. You're playing against the best in the world at that
Right.
moment,
Hmm.
and at that moment, you have to be one of the best, if not the best, or you're not competing. So it is, in my opinion, it's a tough decision to say I want to do this for a living, even football or whatever. Um, I see all the time that the players want to play from now on until they get to that level and they feel the pain, and they hurt, and they know the commitment that it takes. They're making a ton of money, but they're not living a very happy life when you're in physical training every doggone day trying to get back out onto the field. So those decisions have to be made over time. Even 2 weeks from now, you have to make the same decision. 2 months, 2 years, 2 decades, you will have to make that decision all over again, whether you want to play for a living. I was lucky. I lasted 40 years doing what I really loved. I'm blessed.
How did that have an impact on your family? Was it overall support, or was there, we wish you would take a couple of days and just sit down and relax, and not going all over God's creation and doing this?
Well, I was a little different when I got married. My wife married a pro bowler, so it wasn't something that I said I want to learn to do this and do it for a living. So she knew in the front what pro bowlers do. We travel. When we had our son, I told her, I said, "There's no way in the world that I can handle me leaving town with the baby that's crying because I'm about to leave." So we trained our son to know this is what daddy does, and he won't be here for a while. That's all right. That's all right. He'll talk to us every day. So it was a natural progression of life for us. But there are others that I see that had a job for a long time and then go out and they play the tour for a while, and they have families that are saying, "Look, this is not what we signed up for. We want our husband home, or we want our wife home," in the case of the women's tour. And those are the things that it has to be a family team experience. If you're not if you're not going through your profession with your whole team, well, then you're by yourself and you're not going to get there. You have to have that support system, and I did. I still do. I have the best one in the world. And then I have my mom at home, Brennan, that she watches me still. She's 80 years old now and watches me on television, and knowing that that her presence is there. It's there, even though I know she's not in the city with me. He watches.
Yeah, and that's really cool. The fact that I mean, your mom being 80, watching you on TV, when she was growing up, or even when you were growing up, that really wasn't a huge luxury to be able to do. So even just to be able to do that, and to be able to keep track of everything that you've accomplished, and what you're currently doing, that's amazing just in and of itself.
Yeah, and I'm so lucky that at least portion of my career we had devices. When we were growing up, we were using the dial up phone booths, where we would pull up and go into a phone booth and just to try to find out where your hotel is. And now you're like, navigate to the Hilton or to the Red Roof or whatever. Yeah, at least I got a portion of that time with my mom getting to watch on a device as well.
I mean, and without technology, I mean, we wouldn't be able to do this. So
Yeah,
it's amazing, just in the short, what was the internet was what, late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere in there.
exactly.
Yeah. So even within the last, let's say, 20 to 25 years, the advancements that have been made, going from that, how has technology changed the game?
Well, it's changed quite a bit. For instance, they have machines now that oil lanes. They are oiled exactly the same, every one of them. Not all lanes are the same, of course, because you have topography, but at least the oil is placed exactly the same. And
Hmm.
then we have the machines that bring, I said, the devices that bring professional bowling to the general world on a daily basis, and not just the top five. everything that we do in training has a device involved, whether we're filming ourselves, or whether we are booking hotels, flights, rental cars, all that kind of stuff. Look how much easier it is now than what it used to be. In fact, a lot of the players, they didn't like flying. It was just too much doggone work. They said, look, that's a 17-hour drive, but I've got to be 17 hours trying to book hotels, rental cars, and all that kind of stuff. And then if I miss one, look at me. And they said, just give me a car, let me have some mobility, and we're good. They also carried their equipment with their van or truck or RV or whatever. So yeah, I mean, devices and technology has changed everything that we do in our whole world. And for the most part, for the better, in some cases, not so much.
I mean, and now they're bringing AI into the equation. I mean, AI has been talked about for the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, but now it's kind of becoming more relevant. And that's kind of scary, to be honest. When we were growing up, it was, holograms and the Jetsons and, stuff like that, where technology is just everywhere. And, based off of that, it's kind of been a slow advancement, but in the same way, it's been, a big advancement. And it's kind of scary to think that, in I don't know how many years, because I mean, people were talking about flying cars and everything back in the 50s, and we were still not there. But at what point when it gets there, what that's going to do to society, it's a little scary to think about.
What's it look like when everybody has a George Jetson jetpack? We could just, are we going to hit each other in the sky? Are we going to have I guess, what do they call it? Air traffic control for individual people. What will that look like? Now, it's coming. I mean, we're talking about, look at what we've done in the last 25 years. Now let's go forward 200 years from now.
Oh, goodness.
What will this look like?
Thank goodness I won't be around to see that.
Yeah, we're not going to be around, and we're not even smart enough to come up with it yet.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, we hope the world's still spinning. We're sure that, we've got a good chance of that. But then the technology that we're going to have available to us, I mean, we could already, do some serious damage to our own world right now. Think about in 200 years from now, what will be possible. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of glad I lived when I did, and I'm going to get out before it becomes so doggone hard. Heck, right now I have a hard time working my device, much less if you give me anything else that's more tech, that requires more tech sense, then just keep it.
I mean, and that's when, people always or one of the questions when, or at least for me, when I was growing up, was if you could grow up in another decade, what would you grow up in? And I always said, like the 50s and 60s, because you didn't have the technology that you have today. Everything was a lot more black and white. Right. No pun intended with that, with TV and whatnot, but it was a lot more simple back then. And kids were actually out playing, outside, and, you had maybe the Saturday morning cartoons, if you had a TV, and it was just, to me, it seems like a happier time to grow up in versus growing up in the evolution of technology.
Yeah. How can you say that more capability puts you in a less happy place? I don't know. I don't know that. I don't know that I'm any less happy now with technology, but I do know this: I'm a lot more frustrated about different things. Used to, you'd be frustrated because, you threw a rock into somebody's window. Now there's no rocks being thrown outside anymore. So, there's so many things have just changed that much.
I mean, there are always pluses and there are always minuses, but
right, exactly.
I mean, and music back then. God, I love the music back then. But that's a completely other story. Trust is a must, or your game is a bust. Bo Burton. He also used to say that bowling is 20% physical and 80% mental. Do those thoughts still apply to today's game?
Well, I think as far as the trust, that applies in every sport, and in fact, in every endeavor. If you don't trust what you're doing, then you're not going to be as good at it. If you're an air traffic controller, we just mentioned that, and you don't trust what you're doing, can you imagine what's going to happen? So, yeah, trust is a must in everything, I think. And then, what was the other one that he said?
He said that bowling is 20% physical and 80%
Okay.
mental.
No, I don't believe that. I think what it is once you get to our level, yeah. Now it's 80% mental, 20% physical. But to say that somebody that doesn't have the physical capability to bowl like a pro is now capable of using more of their brain and doing so without practice and without training, no, not happening. So once you get to our level, yes. But the first things first, it's way physical until you get capability. Then it becomes mental.
Mm. Okay. Okay. All right. I can't begin to count the number of perfect pocket shots that have left 10 pins. What causes that? And then you can make an adjustment and absolutely crush the pocket and leave a solid 8. It seems
Right.
that it's better scoring having a lighter pocket hit. But why is that?
Well, you leave 10 pins and other pins because of deflection. So if your ball's kind of going down the lane and hooking into the pocket and it hits the pins and deflects, you catch more of the 3-pin, it catches less of the 6 and it's weak and it will leave a 10-pin. So our job is to get a bowling ball into the pins correctly. And there's a window of the ball skids, then it hooks, and then it rolls, and then it rolls out. Well, you got to hit those pins before it rolls out because then it's dead in water, and you got to get it after it's skid state. So we get it to skid down the lane and make a move, and then we want it to just drive over those pins. If the ball's driving the pins, you're going to strike a lot. If it's not, you're not. And somebody says, well, no, the 10 pins just luck and the solid eight's just no, they're not luck. Sometimes it is a little luck because maybe you have a bad rack there and you're unlucky that that rack is bad. But as far as doing it for a living, our carry percentage is just about the main thing in our mind, especially now that the power game is so prominent. We don't like hitting the pocket and not getting a strike or even a 7-10 split or something. That's how you not feed your family, like that right there. But that window of after the skid and before the rollout, we need our ball into the pins at that point. We get less deflection that way, and we get a better carry percentage.
And you talked about bad racks as well. Something I have on here is about re-racks. Is that more of a psychological thing? Like, hey, I just want a new rack there, or that's a physical thing with the pins as well, right?
Well, it will seldom happen unless it's on television that somebody will re-rack for anything other than a bad rack. Okay, because we don't have a shot clock. Now, we have a shot clock, but you're not on the clock unless somebody puts you on the clock, right? It's kind of like golf. Nobody's on the clock unless somebody puts you on the clock. On television, however, you have a shot clock every single shot you throw. And the only way to manipulate that clock is to take a timeout, either with a re-rack or with taping your thumb or something like that. And so oftentimes on television, you'll see bowlers just try to collect themselves and they'll ask for a re-rack just to give them a little more time to breathe because they're all jacked up. You know, you just made the shot of your life and you have a chance to win now and you're jacked up. How are you going to throw a great shot? It's hard to practice jacked up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
how do you get that jacked up and practice that? So yeah, a lot of the guys will use that re-rack to calm themselves.
And speaking of, that jacked up feeling, Dad has in here that he's been to a televised final before, house lights, camera lights, TV audience, adrenaline, pressure, everything. He says it's hot. One or two bad shots can train wreck the entire thing. And he said he watched it live to Tommy Hudson. He said, do you have any tricks that you can use to help recompromise yourself and refocus again? You were talking about that re-rack. Is there
Re-rack
anything
is one
else
of them. Yeah,
anything else that
breathing.
you would say to that?
Yeah, breathing is everything. Sometimes the players will do it accidentally. Even you get up there and you take a deep breath because you need one. Other players say, "No, I need a deep breath before I make every shot." And which is better? I don't know. I know I have my little hand here, and I learned this from Jose Silva, the Silva mind control method, where he'll put his 3 fingers together, and that is a sign that his mind is now in a more focused on whatever it is in the mind. He can do the 3-finger method. Well, mine is kind of like this, where I find where is my heart rate, okay? And when I'm jacked up, I'm just like, oh, my heart rate's way up here right now. Where do I want it? Well, if I want it, let's say here, then I have to drop it lower than that and then re-raise it. So by virtue of Jose Silva, I learned how to control my heart rate to a certain extent. Now, I can't say to you, all right, I'm going to go down to 91. I'm going to go up to 107 or 130. You know, I can tell you pretty much where it is, but I just know whether I need to lower it or raise it. And that, again, is a little breathing, because you're softening your breath, you're exhaling when I come down, and then of course you need new breath. So breathing is huge. Everything that you ever do always matters in professional sports. Everything you ever do, it matters. And whether you're training or whether you're learning what not to do, what to do, when to eat, when to shower, everything matters. So I always just said, look, when you're playing good, I want you to know what happened. I want you to be there so that later on you can tap that. If you don't remember, or if it's just a blur, or boy, if that went too down, you can't go and tap that. So being in the moment was also one of the things that I felt strong about, is look, if you're in the moment, you're going to see everything, you're going to hear things. It wasn't a lot of grab, you know, a lot of, what do you call, playing around when I was bowling. You know, I was serious. I was into it. I was focused on the task at hand. And I think that was one of the things that helped me learn over time, because I didn't miss a whole lot.
You were always there. You were always taking it all in.
Right.
What would you say is your most memorable tournament moment, whether you won or not, or even just your favorite bowling memory, whether it goes as a pro or when you were just growing up?
Well, when I surpassed the hand that says you have to be at least this tall to ride that ride, that was a big day for me now. That was huge. I've had so many memorable moments on the lanes. I mean, that day that I won the 3rd major in a row, it's never been done. That moment was extremely good. Then the Triple Crown moment, that was unbelievable. You're standing there with the U.S. Open trophy and the Triple Crown and the Grand Slam. That, I mean, wow. I once got a standing ovation in New Jersey at Carroll Lanes. We're talking about 84 lanes or something like that. And everybody had come to my pair because I had 2 300s in a row, and I had a string going for the 3rd one. And after that 3rd 300 in a row, this place showed me love like no other. I'll never forget that moment where, you know, we don't get curtain calls in bowling, you know. I got a curtain call. Yeah, it was awesome. And then some little times, you know, the times that I'm having breakfast and I'm watching somebody practice. Like this one time I was watching Mike Miller practice, and I saw something that was monumental in my quest to win titles. It was monumental. I saw it, and the eggs almost fell out of my face, because I knew right then that problem was solved. And things like that, moments like that, I will never forget that moment, because I knew at that very moment that I was going to be Player of the Year the next year. I knew it. There was not even a question. And how can you not look back at a moment like that where there's nobody around, nothing really happened? It was just a day, but it was a big, big day for me.
And it's a day that you'll always treasure with you.
Wow, will I ever?
And those are always,
there was nobody
the
clapping. There was nobody. Gary Skidmore was to my right, and he was having breakfast too, and he didn't even know what was going on. So, yeah, that was just a moment I'll never forget.
One thing that fans will never forget are your remarkable trick shots. So what were your favorite trick shots to do?
I learned a long time ago. I said, look, man, you've got to have a television presence. You have to have that presence. And then Well, there was nothing that we could do as a bowler that everybody in the history of mankind cannot do. Like I can't dunk a basketball. I can't hit a golf ball 400 yards, but I can roll a ball down there and get strikes. And so can everyone else can roll a ball down there and get a strike or even make a split spare, whether it's luck or not, right? So how am I going to stand out without having something that I can do that no one else can? And I decided I can't. So let me find some things that I can do that no one else can. Let's say be rolling a ball out of a towel that I just wrapped up, or spinning a ball down the lane and keeping it on the lane and then ricocheting it into pins, or all kinds of. I mean, my trick shot repertoire is probably, I don't know, 20 deep, and even a couple of times we won the trick shot competition on the PBA tour on television, where the fans are all watching you just tool around. That is how you stand out if you can't do something that everybody else can't do. And so I gravitated to it. I thought it was fun. I had a lot of free time on my hands when I was practicing. So, you just every once in a while you get a little bored, you tear off on some trick shots and entertain yourself. And yeah.
I mean, that's always the best part too, is having fun with it. Because if you're not having fun with it, to me, there's really no point in doing it. So
Correct.
if you can make fun out of it or have some humor with it, or, oh, man, that shot, but hey, I'll get this one, or whatever it is, or that shot really sucked, but you have humor behind it. That's where I find my joy in things. If I can't put humor behind it or have fun with it, it's just not fun for me. And,
Right.
and that's when, for me, I just have to step away from it because it's becoming work, and it doesn't have that fun aspect behind it.
Correct. And when you bowl every day for practice, not every day is going to be fun. I mean, most of those days, that's our work day. And somebody say, yeah, but you're playing, you're working, you think that's fun? What we do down there? No, that's not fun. We are working as hard as we can possibly work, and we don't enjoy that work. We love it, we don't enjoy it, right?
Mm.
And so just give a 5 or 10 minute break from that work in order to lighten the load a little bit and just say, hey, it's still a game. Look, you just mess around for a little while, and then next thing you know, you're there for another hour, hour and a half without even thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. The lanes back at my last base. Unfortunately, my ball I left at home, and all my equipment I left at home. But I was at those lanes for, like 3 hours maybe at a time. Like it got to the point where it was, I'm going to do 10 games or I'm going to hit 150, whichever comes first. Cause that was always my benchmark. I think I hit 150 like once. But it was that determination and the practice and, having a few games, here or there where it was just like, you know what? Okay, well, I'm like you were just saying, we're going to do our work, but then we're going to have a little bit of fun behind it.
Right.
And man, I could spend, yeah, 3 4 hours after work just in those lanes. And the good thing is that their prices were extremely cheap too. Like there were some days where it was like $2 a game or $1.50 a game, or something like that. So it wasn't too terribly expensive, but after 3 4 hours multiple times a week, it adds up.
Love those military based bowling centers because the price is right there now. No parking fees or anything like that either. Just yeah. I do a whole lot of uh, seminars and training days with the military and on the bases. I just love them.
Yeah, it's definitely a great sense of camaraderie and community, which is one reason why I joined to begin with. I was in marching band in high school, and you had that kind of like how the football team has that, and then once I graduated, it was like, what, I'm missing that, and I need to get somewhere where I have that again. And I found that in the military, which is great. Do I think I'm going to do it for the next 20 years? Probably not. Because do I like my job that much? Not really. But the camaraderie and everything, it's opened up my eyes to new possibilities in the civilian world
Mhm. No
that'll
question
give me
about
that sense of team and family.
it. Mhm.
So what do you say to people who use you as an inspiration for their bowling careers?
Thank you. That's Thank you. The greatest compliment in the world is for somebody to mimic you are to use something about you to benefit themselves. That's the best compliment. And I hear it a lot. I hear it a lot that they say, Nora, I try to throw my shot just like you do. And you would never know how much of an impact you have on, somebody that never even knew you. I get to hear that a whole lot now, especially now that I'm retired. I do military events, and I just came back from the TAT, which, you're talking about a couple thousand entries in each of these events. And I don't bowl, so I just talk to people all day. And to hear those things just, makes your life worth it. You know, and I say thank you. Thanks for helping me make my life worth it.
I mean, that's always, and it's always like you were saying, a great sense of satisfaction as well. I've gotten countless emails over the years of people who are saying, your videos brought me joy in a time when my family was going through this, or, your humor with your dad is the only reason why I look forward to being awake in the morning, and it's just that it's that sense of purpose. There was one viewer who I haven't reached out to her in a minute, but her name was Gayla, and she was a cancer patient. And she came on a live stream one night and said, "You two always make my day brighter, and I can't stop watching you two, bicker back and forth or have your humorous talks or something like that." And I was going through a real kind of dark time where people were saying, you shouldn't be doing this, or you're just trying to be so and so, or whatever it is. And it was, after I've impacted somebody who has cancer, and we're the light in her day, the reason why she wants to get up, how can I stop after I do something like that? Or a
Right.
child in Africa who reaches out to me. I shouldn't say child, he's probably 17 or 18 at this point, because it was a few years ago, but his father and grandfather had passed away from COVID. And he said, your family and your videos are bring me light and bring me joy. After that, how can you stop what you're doing if you're making that kind of an impact on somebody like who you don't even know?
Right.
It's just one of those special things that there's just no words really that can come out of it except for thank you,
Right.
so
You
that's
know,
that's
I
said very, very well.
have a really good friend now. His name is Cameron Hurwitz, and he had a disease that his defense mechanism in his body just would not work, and so he needed bone marrow transplant. And man, oh man, oh man, this family went through holy hell trying to keep him alive, even because any kind of germs around, and it could take his life. So I remember we finished in Portland, Maine once, and he was in the hospital. Cameron was in Boston, and I was flying out of Boston. I'd only met him once or twice prior to that, uh, but he had been to a clinic that I had, and his family then hosted a clinic a short time later. And then this disease comes up. Well, I took a ring to him once when I flew out of Boston, and I went to his hospital, and they put me through all the wash and everything. It was crazy what you had to do just to enter the room. But I gave him this ring, and I said, "This is a ring that I won once when I was down by 42 pins."
Wow.
And they said down by 42. And it was one of those fun moments where I just made light of the fact, and I ended up coming back and winning. And I said, "I want you to know that this ring signifies that, yeah, we all get down, and we all have these things that we have to overcome. And I want you to have this." He gave it back 2 years later. He said, "Norm, this ring, I wore it the whole time, and I'm healthy now." And I said, "But this is your
Woo!
ring. This is your ring. I gave it to you." He said, "No, no, no." He said, "This was a tool. I want you to give it to somebody else, because it'll mean as much to them, and it may save their life." Wow. How can that not, take you there?
Right.
But, how can you not say thank you, Cameron, and his whole family? Goodness.
And how is he doing today?
Oh, he's perfect. He's perfect. He made the Bowler's Journal magazine once, the cover of the magazine. He was the kid with the mask on. And he was in junior gold that year. I think he either won or finished second. but they are still in, I believe it's Michigan, where they live, but they still bowl, Cameron and his brother, Reese, and they love bowling. They absolutely love bowling, and they have a product out now that is a looks like a grape sack. In fact, I helped them design it. It's a grape sack that holds a bowling ball that prohibits the heat and other things to go in and make balls crack. So you put them in the sack and they don't crack. So they have that business, and I will never ever not love that family. But what they've done for me, just showing me what is possible from me. Wow. Yeah, I'll never forget them. If you're out there, Cameron, hello, buddy.
I don't know where to go off of that one. We go from such a heartfelt heartfelt message and a heartfelt question, um trying to get back into the seriousness of it all. It's like, well, how do I transition from that? And that doesn't happen very often. I've only had that happen maybe once or twice on other interviews. So props to
Yeah,
you for getting
I
me to.
lost it there, didn't I?
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's no problem. It's no problem. That's what I love about these interviews, is that you get to see the raw emotion and the character and the personality of whoever's on. That you don't just see them on TV bowling. Three perfect games in a row. Or them at their highest points. You learn about what makes their wheel spin, or how they think about everything. And that's always been an interesting the psychological side of things has always been interesting to me. And, well, why did this person make this decision, or what makes them motivated to do this, or whatever it may be. So that's why I love doing these interviews. And it's those moments that we might get totally on another track, but it's those tracks that if I hadn't you know brought that question up, or had this opportunity, that story might have never gotten out to anybody else. And that's not a story that, in my opinion, should be kept quiet. That's an amazing story, with an amazing outcome and hope and inspiration and everything else that's tied
Yeah,
along with it. So thank you for bringing that up and telling Cameron's story and his family's story.
yeah, and yeah, they're all perfect now. That bone marrow transplant, just he was good to go in a matter of days after that, and so he went from fearing for his life every day. And I swear that family, they were so very scared they were going to lose their kid, and now they're just perfectly happy and healthy, and everybody's great. It's wonderful. And you know what? In a small way, I gave him something else to think about. Just something else to think about. Maybe it's inside that ring, maybe it's inside his head, just looking at it. But in certain moments of his life, when he was struggling, he had something else to think about. And so, kudos to me for doing that, right?
I mean, I love it when that happens. It reminds me of a story from when I was in basic training, that there was this trainee that was in my flight. And within a couple of days of him getting there, he had a pretty bad shoulder injury, and it was caused by prior dislocations. And he was basically he was told that medically he could not continue, but there was a pause in the paperwork or whatever it was, and he was still going through with the rest of the flight, watching the rest of the flight progress, knowing that he wasn't going to go through with them and graduate. And
Wow.
it started to get to him mentally and emotionally. And he's like, well, why am I doing this? And he was a very religious kid. And he's like, why is this happening to me? Why am I going through this? Why? And I said, you know what? I've got this challenge coin that a mentor gave to me, and it was a religious coin, so it helped him a lot. And I hope he still has it, because I gave it to him before he left, but that was almost 2 years ago. So who knows where that coin has ended up? But that coin had been passed from my mentor to my dad when he was going through health problems, to me before I left, and now to this kid, who's going through his emotional battle. So I hope he's passed that on to somebody else. but it's just incredible what, where you can find hope. And like I said, the inspiration to keep pushing forward. And, there's always something at the end. It might not be what you were hoping for. Maybe it is what you were hoping for, but there's always something at the end. And, you can't get there. You can't see what that is until, unless you keep moving forward and keep pushing forward.
That's right. And so many times it's so much better than you could have imagined anyway. And, yeah, we do ask why me, why, for people to lose a child is just, that's ridiculously hard. And you would first ask, why would that, why? There's a reason, and God knows we don't. Leave it up to him. And you don't ask why near as often when you leave it up to him, right?
Yeah. You just kind of gotta go with it. And it's like, I
Yeah.
might never know that answer, and I have to live with might never knowing that answer.
Right.
But
And
that
maybe
also,
it's best I don't know, right?
right. And that goes into the mental process of it as well. Am I going to keep dredging on this? Am I going to keep thinking about why, or am I going to shift my focus and, focus on the good that's come out of this? They're not suffering anymore. They're not lying in bed anymore. They're, wherever they are, they're not doing what they were just doing. They're not in the pain that they were just in, or they're not, in the situation that they were just in, or whatever it may be. You got to, or, we're going to focus on, the life that they had or the accomplishments they did or whatever it is. You can't focus on, the bad things. You have to shift your focus, which is never the easiest thing to do.
No, no. And God love everybody that had to go through and that will have to go through circumstances like that. And, we all have our hardships. Everyone does. Nobody's without those, of course. How you deal with them, how you bounce back, how you use them as a tool, uh, that matters. If I hadn't had all those years that were tough for me, I would never have become the bowler that I did. I needed those years. But if you look at me during those years, I'm like, why? And, to a certain degree, I can answer that now. I can say, well, I know why now. At least I have an answer for it now. I didn't then.
Yeah, you stepped out of the situation and you're seeing it from an outside view of it versus
Right. And
when
at
you're
the
in the
time,
middle of it.
how in the world is 10 winless years going to benefit me at all? It's what it said. And then later on, you're smart enough to know.
Right, right. You can't do any progression without, I mean, to a degree, without looking back at it, but don't look back at it for too long so you don't slip back into
Oh, right. But
that
remember
mess.
how it felt. It's like me. I still choke all the time when I think about what could be if I make this shot. But what I'll always try to do is deflect that from myself and say, no, remember how you felt when you finished second. So now I'm not looking at first anymore. I'm remembering the sorrow and the sadness and the pain that second place. And I didn't want that. So I didn't look at winning. I looked at not losing.
Hmm.
Because if I looked at winning, then I would choke every time. It was just, I would do that. But I could throw it really, really good if I thought about, second place and not wanting to be there, because that's the worst place you can finish in a tournament for a bowler. You just don't want second.
Now going through with this, there have been videos that have been circulated with bowlers either losing their cool either at the game or at other players. What are your thoughts on showing emotion during or while bowling?
Look, act like you've been there. Uh, just act like you've been there. Now, if somebody is going to do something, okay, that is distracting to me or that I don't like or that I think needs to have a moment, I'll handle it. Not to say that I'm going to throw something or get loud, but I'll handle it my way. Everybody will handle it their own way, or they won't handle it at all. So maybe some of the things that these players have done was deserving, and maybe not. I haven't seen that much. I mean, I really haven't. A couple of times in my career, even, did I see players that were so upset with one another that they had to duke it out or go to even a shouting match. It's not that much. Look, we don't make a whole lot of money, number one, so there's not a lot to be jealous about. It's just, you got trophies or you don't. So we get to extract at least that out of it. None of us are filthy rich. And because of that, it's so much more of a family atmosphere. Is you're not robbing somebody of their ability to feed their family in bowling much, because there's just not a whole lot out there. So there's not that money reason that people get mad. If you can extract that out of there, then what you have left is a bunch of people just enjoying life on the road. So I tell you what, over my 40 years on tour, they're the greatest people on earth are bowlers. They're just the greatest people on earth. And for the most part, it's because there's not a lot of rich bowlers, maybe family money here and there that I don't know about, but most of us now, we are living day to day, so to speak. Maybe not in Belmonte, but a lot of us were living day to day.
Belmonte's got a lot going for him.
Yes,
I'll
he
tell
sure
you
does.
that. We were
God love him. Hey, he deserves every bit of it.
He does. He does. And we were basically kind of it was cold calling, but with emails, kind of cold emailing people, just seeing, who would write us back. And I had the idea like, hey, it'd be really cool to have Jason on. And Dad went to his website, and for collaborations or for, anything else, for business speakings, or whatever it may be, like I will, he's with what he had there, nothing against him. He's if that's how he is marketing his business, he's doing a good job with his business. I'll put it that way.
No doubt about it.
So he's doing well off for himself, which is really, really cool. So speaking of Jason, because he would fit into this category, who would you say has been like the most impressive rookies that you've ever seen over the years?
Oh, wow. Anthony Simonson sticks out. I mean, my gosh. In fact, he got messed around. It wasn't fair. He was going to become the youngest bowler ever to win a title. I have that distinction. And the problem is that in the World Series of Bowling that year, he qualified for the major championship show. And then there were 3 others that you had to qualify for. So once he qualified, normally the next day's the show. If he had gotten to bowl the next day, he would be the youngest to win. But because there were 3 other shows you had to qualify for, they bumped it 3 days later. And so he's the second youngest to win just because of that little bump. Well, anybody that's going to win at 18, I know Weber did it. He didn't do it at 18. He was 19, but still, that's early enough. Weber, Anthony, myself, those are 3 of the all-time greats at that age. No question about it. I can't even put people in that category because you're talking about teens, kids in their teens competing.
Yeah.
Oof, that's brutal. That's brutal. That's hard to do now. Maybe tennis is a different game that way because youth is so doggone important. But for a bowler, for a team to get there now, that's something else, and a golfer as well. So I'd say Anthony Simonson's a standout in that regard. I think Tackett, yeah, but I didn't see him in his teens. I met him earlier, but I didn't know how good that he was in his teens. I know how good he is now. Anthony Simonson at 19 was just brutally good. And he's even better at 26.
Yeah, I mean, watching those games, you always at the top. You got EJ Tackett, Anthony Simonson, Belmo, and who am I missing? Kyle Troop's usually up there.
Yeah, Kyle.
Oh man, there are so many. There are so many.
And you got Buttriff and Jesper Svensson on the left side. They're just about always there.
And I've been seeing a little bit more of Hanrahan too. I mean, he doesn't make every single television appearance, but I've been seeing more of him as well, which is really cool.
Better. There's no doubt about it. It's a learning process for all of us, At some point, Anthony went through that learning process a lot younger than most people, though, because boy, was it. He won a tournament throwing a backup ball with 2 hands now. Just say it.
Wow.
Yes,
Wow.
wow.
I mean, when you're talking 18, 19 years old, and winning tournaments and titles and all of this, like 18, 19 years old, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, let
Yeah,
alone winning, titles and tournaments and everything else, at that age. So I give anybody who is able to do that, massive props because like like I'll go and, if I ever go and, see a live uh TV broadcast, I'm going to be right at that same age with all of these guys that, are stacking themselves up to, to be greats and into, if they're not already pros to be pros, and I'm at that same age range. And it's like, what happened here? Like how, I'm going to see them and they're the same age that I am, or people younger than me that are skyrocketing up. There's a band that I'm following right now that they're 22, 21, and 17 and I'm 21 and I'm looking at them saying they're off, signing with major record labels and everything else, and I'm going to see them, so
right.
that just proves the hard work and dedication that they put into all of it. And it's just absolutely unreal to see that happen. It really
Yeah,
is.
I couldn't agree more.
So with the rise in, or I shouldn't say with the rise. Yeah, so with the evolution of bowling, we kind of talked on this a little bit earlier. You have the new two-handers coming in because you said it's more of a power game at this point. So what would you recommend to a novice bowler? Would you recommend to start with a one hand and gravitate to a two? Or what would you, or stick with one hand? Or how would you advise them to go about if they're thinking about how to bowl one-handed or two?
I'd say try both. I mean, why not? It's like, would you say, would you bowl left-handed or right-handed if I started over? I'd say, well, try both. And then whichever one that you think that you have the most chance with or the one that you are enjoying yourself more with, then gravitate toward that one, but don't throw in either of them away. I mean, like Osku, for many years, he still does, I think, but he throws full grip at his spares and two hands at his strikes. Now, he may very well spare two hands now because of the weight hole rule. But back, when 2 or 3 years ago, and prior to that, he kept the one arm delivery. He just shot spares with it. That to me sounds pretty doggone intelligent. You use one arm when you need accuracy, and you use two when you need power. Why not?
All right. So whatever works best for you.
Yeah,
Find out what
just
works best for
find a
you
way
and
to
stick
enjoy
with
it.
it.
If you're enjoying it, you're gonna figure it out. Yeah.
Next thing I have here, do you think having all of the history that the PBA has and the evolution of the technology involved, that it can kind of be annoying at some points to see bowlers out there right now? Because back in 94 and beyond that, you, Pete, and all the other greats had to figure it out as you were going along, and you were kind of like the pioneers in a sense for how bowling has shaped in its way today.
Yeah, I mean, it's evolution. It's just like anything else, evolution. But no, no, no. No, we are very appreciative of the talents that are out and have always been. I mean, that's one of the things when you bowl for a living, you had to appreciate pros prior to you, or you wouldn't have wanted to become one.
Mm-hmm.
And so, my idols are Gary Dickinson and George Pappas, and one of my all-time favorites was Jim Stefanich. Well, those are the people that I looked up to, and so therefore, when I got on tour, I didn't want them to look down on me simply because I wasn't their name. No, no, they appreciated what I had, and in many cases, they invested in my process just by helping out here and there. And I do the same thing with the kids. They call me all the time. I get calls all the time now that I'm retired. Where Don Barrett called me just the other day, EJ Tackett, and they asked, how did you do this? We're quick to help them because we appreciate not only their their abilities, but also their desire to be better than they are, even though they're as good as they are. They have the desire to, hey, why wouldn't I want to be a part of that? I don't need anything. You don't need to send me a beer or $100 or nothing. Just the fact that you're interested enough. And then whoever may give a different answer than me, but he has the same heart inside. He'll help anybody. And if you ask us both and get two different answers, you might get double the information. So, that's one of the things that I think Americans stood out with all the other countries is we shared information. When we went to Tokyo, when we bowled in Tokyo, as great a people as they are over there, now we love them dearly, but they didn't share as much information. They would find something and kind of hold it close and protect it. When we're, hey, look what I found, look what I did, and so we shared the information. I think that's why we were better at bowling in my heyday than they were. And I think they're getting so much better now. Maybe that's not the reason, but maybe it is, who knows?
And with that, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen either in the PBA or in bowling in general over the years? I think we kind of touched on this one.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I see is lack of governance. And I'm not pointing any fingers at any personal people, but I will point at the alphabets that are supposed to be our governing body, our bodies. Do your job. Do your job or we're going to lose this. And they say, well, we can't go backwards. I'm not asking you to go backwards. I'm asking you to go back to the start where you're supposed to be. Go back to where this is supposed to be. And everybody knows it. We're not saying anything that hasn't been talked about for, my gosh, Bill Taylor and I had these discussions when I was in my 20s. So yeah, we got to get back to protecting and preserving this sport and not letting it run amok. And when I say run amok, if they let me drive that Volkswagen bus through there, and I mean, at what point are you drawing the line? The line's been drawn at 16 pounds, and this is the imbalances, and here's the rules and all that. I think they need to be tighter. And so I think that the biggest change, in my opinion, is lack of change to governance. And in doing that, the bowling balls, the pins, everything is an investment to make the game easier. Golf invests to make the game harder. We invest in it. Why are they making 100 million and we're not? I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit of the reason. I don't want to make people upset though. I'm just saying, hey, we need governance.
Right. It's kind of like, okay, well, you're trying to adapt to culture here because culture wants things to be easier and we want to open to a wider demographic. But in the end of it, you're kind of losing the integrity of the game in a sense. And even though, yes, you're making it easier, if everything was easy, everyone would do it.
Well, right. What do we want to do? Checkers or chess?
Right.
Checkers for hours. You play chess forever.
Right. I mean,
why is that so hard for people to understand? Is we love the challenge. Let's keep it. That's one of the reasons I think bowling was so very popular. Is because it was challenging.
Yeah.
It still is. It still is as challenging as we want to make it.
I mean, like I said, I can't bowl over a 150. So to me, it's extremely challenging. For you, 150 is a terrible game, But I mean, like I learned how to play checkers when I was younger. I learned how to play chess. I forgot how to play checkers, because it's the difficulty of it. And that's what kind of intrigues people into it. So the same thing with pro sports, again, you want to try to open it as to get more people interested in it, but you kind of got to find the balance of keeping the original integrity and the original difficulty and opening it up to where people can learn how to do it and are okay at failing. That's one thing that I think today in society, is it's kind of going the wrong way, is people are afraid to fail.
Yeah.
And
you get participation trophies now.
Oh God, participation trophies. Don't even remind me of participation trophies.
I showed up on time. Give me a pat. Says I showed up on time.
I was watching a show the other day, and it was a basketball show, and the coach was saying, like, hey, great job, this and that, and you're doing awesome, and you're gonna be, player of the game or whatever it is. And the administration that was there was like, well, you can't tell them that. And it's like, well, why not? They earned what they got. I gave them this trophy because they earned it. And they were like, well, it can kind of, demoralize the other students. And well, they didn't get one. And, you're treating this person with special privilege. And I'm like, really?
Duh.
And I'm thinking to myself that as an audience, that the coach was saying the same thing, but I'm thinking to myself as, that someone watching that, and it's like, really? You really want
That's what
to,
life is right there, my brother.
right? I mean, like,
You get better at something, your life gets better, you make more money, and the more you invest in your crafts, the better you're going to do. I mean, come on, let's get back
yeah,
to, yeah, things are hard, but let's don't make them easy by changing the rules.
yeah. I mean, it's that thing where it's okay. You want a trophy, you work hard, you get the trophy, and you're gonna slip and fall, and you get back up, and you keep going. And as cliche as that's become nowadays, it's 100% true. If you want to get to that point, you got to earn it. You got to go to that point. If it's handed to you, well, you didn't do any work. And you can say that, hey, I got this, or whatever it is, and you can be happy for it. You didn't do any work to get there. And I personally don't think the reward should be earned. That's how I should put it. The reward should be earned. It shouldn't just be given. It shouldn't just be handed out.
Right. And
And
handing an award for somebody who deserves it.
right, exactly.
If that upsets somebody who doesn't, well, then get better.
Right, exactly. It's like if you took away the trophy from the TOC, it's like, okay, well, this person won, but we want to make sure that everybody else, is,
Right.
oh, what's the word?
We don't want anybody to feel bad.
Yeah,
So we'll give
exactly.
everybody a trophy.
Yeah, we'll give everybody a tiny little trophy, like one of the mini ones, and we're just gonna take away the big trophy at the end. It'll be like, it's like, no, I earned that one. I made it to the finals. I climbed up from number 58 to number one, or whatever it was. Or I think Belmo I think he was at 58 and he made it to like
Yeah.
6 and then climbed the step ladder up. Yeah,
Yeah.
he earned it. There's no way that he didn't earn that. And he showed that, that he did and that he deserved what he did or deserved what he got. So this is an interesting question. Getting off of that in society and everything else. Interesting question here that I have. How did hooking the ball come into the game? Because when I think of bowling, like when it might have first started, or you might have a better picture on this than I did. But I'm thinking, more of the straight approach and into the pocket with a little bit of hook on it. And now there's a giant hook, but when you were doing it, it was more straight. So how did the hook come into the play versus just straight shots into the pocket?
10 years prior to that, you said it was 2003.
I think is what I was watching. Yeah.
So yeah, we've all pros can hook a ball. I mean, all of us can. And you hook it just to get angle. And so you get less deflection. So hook is power. It's like pushing on the gas, turning the wheel. That's what you're doing to that bowling ball is you're giving it some gas and you're turning that wheel. And it's same in racing when you recover. Our bowling ball is doing the same thing. We turn the wheel to where it's sideways and then it will recover. Hook has always been a part of the game. It never has not. The amount of hook that we use for score nowadays is a lot more because the more you hook it, the more splits you can leave. Okay. But if you're hitting the pocket every time, there's no splits. So if they make getting to the pocket easier, you're going to hook it or you're not going to win. If they make getting to the pocket tougher, you're going to go straight or you're not going to win. It's pretty much that way on tour because everybody is great. So the straight players are the best straight players in the history of mankind, and the hook players are the best hook players in the history of mankind. And whoever's got the advantage will win. It's just that way. I was talking to you about Jason. Jason would be winning titles right now if it was in the 80s environment, but he would be doing it with one hand. He would be hooking it less. It's just that simple.
And kind of going with that as well, the oil patterns too. Some of the oil patterns are a lot more difficult, I should say, than others. And that'll have an influence on it as well. So what are some of the toughest oil patterns you've ever played on, and why have they been so tough? Like what makes them that tough?
Listen, all the PBA patterns are tough. We just wish they stayed like that. Because I'm going to change that pattern in 15 minutes. Before practice is over, I'm going to manipulate that lane. And so is everybody else on the floor. We hate that. We want the equipment that does not change that. We want that back. Because in the 80s now, we only oiled them once a day. Now, of course, in the morning they were slicking, and at night they hooked off the lane. And everything in between was in between. Well, now we can't even bowl 4, 5, 6 games before they have to re-oil them because the bowling balls absorb that much oil. And when we can get flare, means it's not tracking right over its same track. So if you think about it, that first track that a bowling ball makes going down a lane will pick up oil. So it's got a track of oil on it. If it doesn't flare, then that oil will track right over the top of that same oil and it won't pick up anymore because it's already there. But when you flare a ball and you get these rings that go all the way around it, now you're picking up 10 and 12 and 14 times the amount of oil per shot. So now we can't even last 6 games without people having to throw over the gutter caps. And look, yeah, good, bad, indifferent, or whatever. I have my opinion. And my opinion is that we need that playing field to stay the way it was built because those patterns are hard. They are all very, very hard. And so when you say, what's the toughest one? Well, flat, US Open pattern, flat, hardest one known to man. Yeah. So more like that would be best, I think, but a lot less oil and a lot less potential in bowling balls, I think. And then the pins have gotten easier as well. I mean, now we got voided pins where they fly everywhere. Yeah. Like I said before, all of the investment in this doggone sport has been investment into scoring made easier. I don't protect that scoring environment. Invest the money in keeping the scoring pace to where it's always challenging so that you're always offering chess, not checkers.
Is there anything you'd like to say to aspiring bowlers who hope to join the PBA one day?
Yeah, I would say that it's up to you. I don't care who you are. It's up to you. It wasn't up to my mother. It wasn't up to anybody. For me, it was up to me. And I saw myself when it was up to me and I didn't get it done, and was it up to me and I did. But it was still up to me in both cases. So if it's your dream, follow your dream. Don't follow somebody else's dream. And it's okay to have a dream. It's okay to look up and say, I want to go up there. Why not? Shoot for the stars. If you have the largest goal ever and you barely miss it, that's pretty good. If you have a really small goal and you barely miss it, not so good. So, hey, swing for the fence, and why not you? That's what I would say. Why not you?
Well, all right. Well, I'm again very grateful that you came on today. It's been a pleasure talking with you. It's been a pleasure learning from you. Hopefully, I can get to a TV live, at some point. That's definitely on the bucket list to see all of the greats or anybody who's there, in action. And hopefully, I'll be able to meet you one day. But for the time being, we'll just have to thank technology once again to be able to make this possible. Yeah, I hope everyone who's watching, I hope you all learned a lot from today. I hope you all enjoyed today in today's episode of Your Story. If you did, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this video out. If you're an aspiring bowler, listen to what this man said. He knows a lot more about bowling than I do. I'm just glad I could bring him along he could bring me along for the ride on his story, and I could bring him along for the ride on my story. So anyway, I hope you all have a good rest of your day, and I'll catch y'all later. Bye,
You too,
guys.
Brennan. Nice to see all of you. Thank you. And way to go.